I'm Abigail Russell, 32, and I've been running our family's small real estate company in Albuquerque, New Mexico for 6 years. I poured everything into it, my savings, my time, my sanity, to keep it afloat. But at a family dinner, everything changed. My dad leaned forward, his voice calm but firm, and said, "We think it's best you step away for now." My mom nodded, her eyes avoiding mine. My aunt chimed in, her tone sharp. "It's time for your brother to take over." The room went quiet. My heart pounded, but I forced a smile. "Understood," I said, my voice steady. "I'll respect that, and step away from the company's funds too." Their faces froze. They didn't expect that. What happened next flipped our family upside down. They thought they could push me out, but they had no idea what was coming or what I'd uncover about their plans. If you were in this situation, what would you do? Would you choose to walk away quietly or find a way to turn the tables? Leave a comment below and let me know your thoughts. 6 years ago, I took over our family's real estate company. It wasn't much, just a small office, a few listings, and a lot of debt. My dad and mom, who owned shares, had no interest in running it. Neither did my Aunt Gloria. They handed me the keys and said, "You're good with numbers, Abigail. You handle it." So I did. I sank every dollar of my savings, $40,000, into keeping the lights on. I paid the rent for our office on Central Avenue, covered property taxes, and even bought a small plot of land to flip for profit. That was my first year, and it never got easier. I worked 60-hour weeks negotiating with buyers, chasing down contractors, and balancing the books. Every deal I closed kept us afloat. I didn't take a salary for the first 2 years. Every cent went back into the company. Meanwhile, my brother Jonathan treated it like his personal ATM. He'd show up all smiles, asking for loans to cover his lifestyle. A new truck, $15,000. A weekend in Vegas, $2,000. I bailed him out of gambling debts 3 times, totaling $28,000. I kept a spreadsheet, not to hold it over him, but to track where my money went. He never said thank you. Not once. Dad and Mom didn't care. They'd shrug when I mentioned Jonathan's spending, saying, "He's young, he'll figure it out." Aunt Gloria was worse. She'd roll her eyes and say, "You're too controlling, Abigail." Controlling. I was the one keeping the company alive. Without my cash, we'd have lost the office years ago. But I didn't push back. They were family, and I thought, that's what you do, carry the load. No questions asked. The first big red flag came 3 years in. Jonathan needed $5,000 for car repairs. I wired the money only to see him post photos of a new sound system on social media. I confronted him, and he laughed it off. "Relax, it's just business," he said. Business. My money wasn't his playground, but I let it slide, telling myself I was helping the family. Dad called me after, his voice soft. "Don't be so hard on him, Abigail," Mom echoed. "He's trying. What, to bleed us dry?" Year 4, I bought another property, a fixer-upper in the Northeast Heights. It cost me $30,000 of my own money to secure the deal. The profit, $60,000, went straight into the company to cover payroll and taxes. Jonathan didn't lift a finger, but he still asked for a bonus to cover a trip to Miami. I said no for the first time. He stormed out, and Mom called me that night. "Why can't you just help him?" she asked. I bit my tongue. Help him. I was holding up the entire family. By year 5, I was exhausted. I'd paid off $70,000 in company debt, negotiated 10 major sales, and kept our reputation intact. Clients trusted me, not the family name. But at home, I was invisible. Dad would talk about Jonathan's potential like he was the one closing deals. Aunt Gloria would hint I was too involved in the business, like I was hogging the spotlight. The truth. They didn't want to know how much I was carrying. My savings were gone. Over $100,000 poured into the company. I hadn't taken a vacation, hadn't bought myself anything. I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment so I could keep the business running. Jonathan's spending got worse. Last year, he racked up $12,000 in credit card debt, claiming it was for business expenses. I checked the statements, restaurants, clubs, a new watch. I covered it again because Dad begged me to keep the peace. I started to feel like a stranger in my own family. They didn't see me as Abigail, the one who kept the company alive. They saw me as a resource, someone to lean on without ever asking what it cost me. I tried talking to them. Once over coffee, I told Mom how much I'd put in every dollar every late night. She listened, nodded, then changed the subject to Jonathan's latest plan to start his own side hustle. Aunt Gloria was no better. When I showed her the books proving I'd covered 90% of the company's costs, she said, "Well, you're good at it. So it's fine." Fine. I was drowning and they didn't care. The worst part wasn't the money. It was the silence. No one asked how I was doing. No one thanked me. I kept going because I thought, that's what family does. You sacrifice. You show up. You fix things. But every time Jonathan took another loan, every time Dad and Mom brushed it off, something in me cracked a little more. I wasn't just tired. I was done being their bank. I didn't know how much longer I could keep this up, or what it would take to make them see. Then that dinner happened, and everything I'd held together started to unravel. That night at my parents' house in Albuquerque, the air felt heavy before anyone spoke. We were halfway through dinner, roast chicken, mashed potatoes, the usual spread, when Dad cleared his throat. He set his fork down, looked me in the eye, and said, "Abigail, we think it's best you step away from the company for now." My stomach dropped. Mom nodded, her hands folded tightly in her lap, not meeting my gaze. Aunt Gloria leaned back in her chair, her lips curled in a way that wasn't quite a smile. "It's time your brother took the reins," she added. "He needs this chance to grow." I stared at them, my fork frozen mid-air. 6 years of pouring my savings into our real estate company, 60-hour weeks bailing Jonathan out of his messes. None of it mattered. They wanted me out. For him. Jonathan, who hadn't stepped foot in the office in months, who treated our accounts like his personal piggy bank. I glanced at him across the table. He was looking at his plate, smirking like he'd already won. "Abigail, you're too controlling," Aunt Gloria went on, her voice sharp. "You've been running things like it's only yours. Jonathan deserves a shot. He deserved nothing. I'd paid for his truck, his gambling debts, his trips to Vegas. I'd kept the company alive while he partied. But I didn't say that. Not yet." Mom chimed in, her tone softer but no less firm. "We just think it's fair, honey. He's family." Fair. The word burned in my chest. I'd sunk over $100,000 of my own money into the business. I'd negotiated deals, paid the rent on our Central Avenue office, and bought properties to flip. They didn't know or didn't care how much I'd carried. Dad leaned forward, his voice steady. "You've done a lot, Abigail, but it's time to let go. Let your brother step up." Step up? Jonathan couldn't even balance his own checkbook. I set my fork down, my hands steady despite the anger boiling inside. I looked at Dad, then Mom, then Aunt Gloria. Their faces were set like they'd rehearsed this. Jonathan's smirk widened. Something in me snapped, not loud, not dramatic, but quiet like a wire finally breaking after too much strain. I took a slow breath and said, "Understood. I'll respect that." They relaxed, thinking they'd won. Then I added, "And I'll step away from the company's funds too." The room went still. Dad's eyes widened. Mom's mouth opened, but no words came out. Aunt Gloria's smug look faltered. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice tight. Jonathan finally looked up, his smirk gone. "What are you talking about?" he demanded. I kept my voice calm, almost cold. "I've been funding the company with my own money. If I'm out, so is my investment. All of it." Dad tried to laugh it off. "Now, Abigail, let's not be rash. We're just asking you to take a step back." But I wasn't listening. For the first time in years, I felt clear. They wanted Jonathan to run things. Fine. Let him figure out how to pay the bills without me. I pushed my chair back and stood. I'm done, I said. You want him in charge? He's all yours. I left the table, their voices rising behind me. Mom called out, Abigail, wait. Aunt Gloria muttered something about me being dramatic. Jonathan snapped, you can't just do that. But I was already out the door, my heart racing, not with fear but with resolve. I'd given them everything, my money, my time, my life. No more. That night, I sat at my desk in my one-bedroom apartment, the glow of my laptop the only light. I logged into the company's bank account. My account. The one I'd poured my savings into. $120,000 of my personal funds were still tied up in it, money I'd used to keep the office running, to cover payroll, to buy that last plot of land. I didn't hesitate. I initiated the transfer, pulling every cent of my investment back to my personal account. It took 10 minutes. By midnight, the company's account was nearly empty, left with just enough to cover the next week's utilities. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel sad. I felt free. I shut my laptop and leaned back in my chair. They thought they could push me out and keep everything I'd built. They had no idea what they'd just unleashed. The next few days would show them exactly what their decision cost. The fallout came fast. By the next morning, our real estate company was in chaos. Without my funds, the bank account couldn't cover the rent for our Central Avenue office. 2 major property deals, one for a downtown condo, another for a suburban lot, fell through because we couldn't pay the escrow deposits. The landlord sent a notice, pay up in 7 days, or we'd lose the office. Clients started pulling out, leaving voicemails about unprofessional conduct. The company, which I'd held together for 6 years, was crumbling, and I didn't lift a finger to stop it. My phone lit up before noon. Dad sent the first text, Abigail. How could you do this? We're losing everything. His words stung, but not enough to make me waver. He didn't mention his role in pushing me out or how he'd ignored my sacrifices. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the reply button. I typed, I respect your decision, and hit send. That was all I'd give him. Mom called an hour later, her voice trembling. Abigail, please, you can't let the business fail. We need it. Your brother needs it. She sounded desperate, like she was pleading for her life. I remembered all the times she'd brushed off Jonathan's spending, telling me to help him out. Now she was begging, but not for me, for him. I kept my tone even. Mom, I respect your decision. She gasped, then hung up. I didn't call back. Jonathan's voicemail came that evening. His voice was sharp, almost shaking with rage. You think you're so high and mighty, Abigail. You're screwing us all over. You'll regret this. He didn't apologize, didn't acknowledge the years I'd bailed him out. He just blamed me, like always. I didn't reply. My silence was louder than any argument. The next day, my cousin Tara texted me. She'd always been the quiet one, staying out of family drama. Her message was short. Aunt Gloria wants to talk. Can you meet her? I knew what this was, Gloria's attempt to pull me back in. She'd been the loudest voice at that dinner, calling me controlling, siding with Jonathan. I replied to Tara, I respect your decision. She didn't write back, but I could feel her confusion through the screen. By the third day, the office was a ghost town. Our receptionist quit when her paycheck bounced. The phone company sent a final warning for the unpaid bill. I got an email from a client I'd worked with for years saying they were switching to a competitor. Each notification felt like a nail in the coffin of the business I'd built. But I didn't feel guilty. They'd chosen this when they chose Jonathan over me. Gloria called that afternoon, her voice dripping with condescension. Abigail, you're being selfish. This company is our family's legacy. You can't just walk away. Legacy, I'd been the one paying for that legacy, every dollar, every sleepless night. She hadn't lifted a finger in years. I cut her off. Aunt Gloria, I respect your decision. She scoffed, muttering something about my attitude, then hung up. I didn't care. Her words couldn't reach me anymore. Jonathan sent another message the next morning, this one colder. "You're destroying us." "You happy now?" I pictured him typing it, probably from the new apartment he'd rented with money I'd given him. I didn't respond. My answer was the same silence. Mom tried again that evening, leaving a voicemail. "Abigail, we're family. You can't do this to us." Her voice cracked, but it didn't move me. Family. They'd stopped being my family the moment they pushed me out. Tara reached out again on the 5th day, her tone more urgent. "Abigail, Aunt Gloria says we're losing the office. Can you at least talk to her?" I could tell she was caught in the middle, probably pressured by Gloria to play messenger. I felt a pang for Tara. She didn't deserve to be dragged into this, but I wasn't budging. "I respect your decision," I texted back. She called me right after, her voice soft. "Abigail, I don't know what's going on, but this is bad. Can't you fix it?" "Fix it." I'd been fixing it for years. I repeated. "Tara, I respect your decision." She sighed and hung up. By the end of the week, the company was on its last legs. The landlord locked the office doors and our website went offline because the hosting bill wasn't paid. Dad sent another text, longer this time. "Abigail, we're begging you. Put the money back. We'll figure this out together." Together, they hadn't wanted me when they made their decision at that dinner. I didn't reply. My silence was my answer, and it was final. I sat in my apartment staring at my phone, the notifications piling up. Each one was a reminder of how much they'd relied on me and how little they'd valued it. I'd given them everything and they'd thrown it back in my face. But I wasn't angry anymore. I was calm, steady, like a weight had lifted. They wanted Jonathan to run the show. Let him. Let them all deal with the consequences. I didn't know it then, but something bigger was brewing, something that would make this mess look small. 2 weeks after the company collapsed, I got an email from the bank. It was a routine notice about a property sale, but one detail stopped me cold. A contract for a lot we owned in Northeast Heights, listed under my name, had been signed and submitted. I hadn't signed anything. My heart raced as I opened the attachment. The signatures were Jonathan's and his girlfriend Ava's, but my name was on the seller's line. The sale was for $50,000 and the funds were wired to an account I didn't recognize. I called the bank. They confirmed the contract was processed days after I'd pulled my money out. Someone had forged my signature. I dug deeper, pulling bank statements and company records. The lot was one I'd bought with my own $30,000 4 years ago. The profit was supposed to go back to the company, but now it was gone, redirected to an account linked to Jonathan. I found emails between him and Ava discussing how to move the deal quietly. One email mentioned Dad and Mom saying they'd agreed to look the other way. My own parents. They knew and did nothing. The betrayal cut deeper than the dinner ever had. I wasn't going to let this slide. I gathered every piece of evidence: bank notices, the forged contract, my original purchase records, and those emails. I printed them, organized them in a folder, and waited. A week later, Tara called. "Abigail, can we meet? Everyone's freaking out about the company." I set up a family meeting at Mom and Dad's house. Her voice was tense, like she knew something was wrong. I agreed to come, but I wasn't there to fix things. I was there to end them. The meeting was in my parents' living room, the same place we'd had that dinner. Dad sat at the head of the table, his face tight. Mom fidgeted with her coffee mug, avoiding my eyes. Aunt Gloria perched on the couch, her arms crossed, ready to lecture. Jonathan slouched next to Ava, his girlfriend, who I'd only met once before. Tara sat across from me, looking like she wanted to be anywhere else. The air was thick with tension, but I felt calm, almost cold. I had the truth in my hands. I started by placing the folder on the table. "Before we talk about the company," I said, my voice steady, "I need to address something." I opened the folder and slid the forged contract toward them. "This is a sale for the Northeast Heights lot under my name." I didn't sign it. "Jonathan, you did." So did Ava. Their faces froze. Jonathan's jaw tightened and Ava's eyes darted to him. I kept going. The bank confirmed the signatures. $50,000 gone to an account you set up, Jonathan. And these emails I laid out the printed pages show you planned it with Ava. Dad, Mom, you knew, and said nothing. Jonathan slammed his hand on the table. You're twisting this, Abigail. That lot was company property. I didn't flinch. Company property I bought with my money, I said. $30,000 4 years ago. My investment, not yours. I turned to Dad and Mom. You let him do this. You let him forge my name. Mom's face crumpled. Abigail. We didn't mean she started, but I cut her off. You meant to keep quiet. That's worse. Aunt Gloria jumped in, her voice sharp. Abigail, you're blowing this out of proportion. We're family, we handle things together. Together, I almost laughed. I pulled out my record, 6 years of bank statements, receipts, and contracts. This is what I handled, I said, spreading them out. $120,000 of my savings. Office rent, payroll, property taxes, Jonathan's debts. I kept this company alive. And you all pushed me out for him. I pointed at Jonathan, who was glaring at me. Ava spoke up, her tone defensive. You're just jealous, Abigail. Jonathan's trying to save the business you tanked. Save it. I slid another document forward, a bank statement showing the company's account before I pulled my funds. This shows I funded 90% of our operations. Without me, there was no business. And you, Ava, helped him steal from it. Her face went pale and she looked away. Dad tried to play peacemaker. Abigail, let's calm down. We can fix this. Fix what? Their lies. Their betrayal. I shook my head. You fixed nothing when Jonathan took my money for his truck, his gambling, his trips. You fixed nothing when you told me to step away. I turned to Mom. You begged me to keep the peace to help him. I did for years. And this is what I get: a forged contract and my own parents covering for him. Jonathan stood, his voice rising. You're so full of yourself, Abigail. You think you're the only one who matters? I met his eyes. I was the only one who paid. Tara, who'd been silent, finally spoke. Abigail, I didn't know about this. I swear. Her voice was soft, almost broken. I believed her. She was caught in their mess just like me. But it didn't change anything. Gloria tried one last time. Abigail, stop this. You're tearing the family apart. I looked at her, my voice low. You tore it apart when you chose him over me. I gathered my papers, stood, and walked to the door. I'm done cleaning up your messes. You wanted Jonathan in charge. Deal with what he's done. Mom called after me. Abigail, please. But I didn't stop. I was out of their reach now. As I drove away, my hands steady on the wheel, I felt something new. Not anger, not hurt, but clarity. They'd crossed a line I couldn't forgive, and I was ready to walk away for good. After that meeting, I knew I was done. I didn't wait for apologies or excuses. I hired a lawyer the next day to sever all my ties with the family's real estate company. It took weeks of paperwork, signing over my shares, untangling my name from contracts, and ensuring none of their debts could follow me. By the end of the second month, I was free. The company, the one I'd poured my life into, was no longer my burden. I packed my things, left my one-bedroom apartment in Albuquerque, and moved to Denver, Colorado. A friend had connected me with a job at a mid-sized real estate firm there. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine, a fresh start, no strings attached. I settled into a small condo in Denver, far from the chaos I'd left behind. My new job was straightforward, analyzing property deals, crunching numbers, no family drama. For the first time in years, I worked for myself, not to prop up someone else's mistakes. My phone stayed quiet. No texts from Dad, no voicemails from Mom, no demands from Jonathan. I'd made it clear I was done, and they got the message. I started sleeping better, no longer waking up to the weight of their expectations. Back in Albuquerque, the company didn't survive. Without my funds, it couldn't pay its debts. The bank foreclosed on the office, and the last few clients walked away. I heard through a former colleague that the company filed for bankruptcy 3 months after I left. Jonathan faced worse. The bank, after my lawyer sent them the forged contract for the Northeast Heights lot, opened an investigation. They found more discrepancies, other unauthorized transactions tied to Jonathan's name, totaling over $70,000. He was hit with a lawsuit for misusing company assets. I didn't follow the details. I didn't need to. He'd made his choices, and now he was paying for them. Dad and Mom took it hard. They'd taken out a second mortgage on their house to cover company expenses years ago, relying on my investments to keep things afloat. Without the business, they couldn't make the payments. The bank started foreclosure proceedings, and they were forced to sell their home at a loss. Tara told me later they'd moved into a small rental across town, struggling to make ends meet. I felt a twinge of sadness for them, but it faded fast. They'd known about Jonathan's scheme and stayed silent. They'd chosen him over me, and this was the result. One afternoon, about a month after I settled in Denver, I got a surprise visit. My Uncle Richard showed up at my new office looking tired but calm. I hadn't seen him in years. He'd stayed out of the family business, living quietly on the outskirts of Albuquerque. "Abigail," he said, sitting across from me, I heard what happened. "I'm proud of you." I was caught off guard. Proud. No one in my family had ever said that to me. He leaned forward, his voice low. "I went through something similar with your dad and Aunt Gloria years ago. They leaned on me, took what I gave, then pushed me out when I set limits. I walked away, and it was the best thing I ever did." His words hit me like a wave. I'd always thought I was alone in this, carrying the family's weight while they dismissed me. But Richard had been there too. He told me how he'd invested in their early business ventures only to be sidelined when he refused to keep funding their mistakes. "Setting boundaries isn't selfish," he said. "It's survival. You did what I wish I'd done sooner." We talked for hours, sharing stories of being the family's fixer, always expected to give more. For the first time, I felt seen, not as a resource, but as a person. That conversation changed how I saw my choice. I'd spent years feeling guilty for wanting to protect myself, for wanting to stop being everyone's safety net. Richard's story showed me I wasn't wrong to walk away. I'd given my family everything: my money, my time, my trust, and they'd thrown it back in my face. Cutting them off wasn't just about the company, it was about reclaiming my life. I didn't hate them, but I didn't owe them anything anymore. 3 months into my new life in Denver, I was thriving. My job was steady, my savings were growing, and I'd even started hiking on weekends, something I'd never had time for in Albuquerque. I didn't check on my family, didn't scroll through their social media. Tara reached out once, asking if I'd ever come back. I told her no, not in the way she meant. I wasn't angry, just done. She seemed to understand, but I knew she'd stay tangled in their mess. That was her choice, not mine. Looking back, I don't regret a single step. Pulling my money out that night, confronting them with the truth, walking away, it was all necessary. I learned the hard way that family isn't a free pass to take advantage of you. Love doesn't mean you have to sacrifice everything. Setting boundaries, even if it means cutting ties, is how you protect yourself. It's how you build a life that's yours, not someone else's anchor. If there's one thing I'd tell anyone listening, it's this: you don't owe anyone your peace. Not your parents, not your siblings, not your family's so-called legacy. When they cross your lines, when they take without giving, you have every right to walk away. I did, and I'm freer for it. My family chose their path, and I chose mine. And I'm not looking back.